and this is my story. For starters, I think I'm going to go with OCC and English. The reason I came to OCC is pretty much because Mount St. Mary's failed. I got accepted, don't get me wrong, but the tuition was way out of my league, and the financial aid was proven to be no help, which is why I started OCC in January. I was so set on going to the Mount that I was dead set. That was it. There was nothing else. The answer was the Mount. I knew I was going to major. I knew what I was going to do there. I met a few teachers. I knew there's a new president coming in my year I was supposed to go in. I met him. I was ready. I was Mount all the way. And then something very interesting came up. I was down as a commuter, and I don't drive. We being me, my parents, and everyone else in the house, pretty much avoided this issue until about a week before school was supposed to start. To which I finally said to my parents, guys, how am I going to get to school on the first day? And they said nothing. They left this decision up to me. So I sat down and I thought about it, and I really hated the thought of it, but I had to go to Orange County Community College, which seemed, as I'd heard from so many people, like a drag. It sucked. I was pretty upset that I couldn't start school until January, and I was going to work. I had promised myself I wouldn't go. So that January, I'm chilling in OCC, I'm taking classes, joined one club, kept to myself. I was an education major, education emphasis, and basically I had been signed up, I was ready to go, and I started my classes here. And the more I did, the more I learned to love this place. I joined the Future Teachers Association, still a technical member. This is my 5th semester in that club. And I learned to love it. But the thing is, as I grew and as I began to develop more at OCC and join more clubs, I kind of put teaching as a lower priority. I've gotten more into writing and creating, because English is my favorite subject for one reason. In history, George Washington will always be the first president. In math, 2 + 2 is always going to be 4. But when you write an essay, you're leaving a piece of yourself on that paper. English is, other than arts and other stuff like that, English is the only major that's considered a primary academic, like math, science, etc., that you get to put yourself into, and there's no other subject matter in any school that allows you to do that. And I really liked the thought of that when I first realized it. Along with writing humor, which is just what I do in spare time, that came about when I was in high school. I was the kid in high school that nobody knew went to that high school. True story, my first lunch, there was, I guess, a fight going on behind me, but I didn't see it. I saw people on the table in front of me slowly begin to get up, and I said, what on earth is going on? So I stood up, and as I turned to look behind me, next thing I knew, my face was on the table, and people were fighting on top of me. After I was pulled out and the whole thing was over, I was pulled into the principal's office with 2 other young men involved. So the principal asks the first kid, why were you in this fight? Yada yada yada. He explains the side story. The principal says, okay. Asks the second kid, why were you in this fight? And then he goes on and says stuff about the other kid and so on. And then the principal gets to me and says, why were you in this fight? And before he could answer, the first kid said, who is he? And the principal turned to him and said, you were beating this kid up. And they both turned to me and said, I'm sorry, he has nothing to do with this. The principal said, is that true? I said, I've never met either of these 2 guys in my life. And he said, go to the nurse and then go back to class. And I was pretty much, I won't say I was invisible, but I wasn't a prominent image either. So I pretty much went through high school without no real friendships, no real connections or bonds with anyone. And that's when I started writing. That's when I would take my day and I would turn it into a humorous sketch at the end of the day. It would be something I would do to escape in a way, to make myself smile in events that normally wouldn't end. with that expression.
Hi, this one time I peed on a street in London. That's it, really.
So, I'm an English major, which requires that I take English 102. I think everyone is required to take English 102, but I'm double required to take 102. So, we had the rough draft of a paper due, and I didn't have my rough draft of this paper. But it was okay, because we got together in groups, and we assessed each other's rough drafts. And there was one kid whose name that I will withhold, because he was a good kid, but he couldn't write for his life. And the four of us were helping this one kid. Call him Steve. And Steve's paper was abysmal. So, we're helping Steve, and then the professor comes over and says, I see a problem. There are 5 bodies, but only 4 papers. And I'm like, yes, I don't have my rough draft, but it's okay, because we're helping Steve. And he goes, no, you're not helping. You're only in the way. I'm like, but can't you see we're all helping? We're helping. This paper is bad. He needs help. We're helping. He's like, no, please vacate yourself from my classroom. I'm like, okay, fine. Whatever you want. I'm not gonna argue. I get up, pack up my stuff. As I'm leaving, he blocks the exit, puts his hand on his hip, kicks his leg out, and he looks me up and down and says, what immortal hand or eye dare frame your faithful symmetry? And I stood, blank-faced, and I said, you are a pompous asshole. I'm leaving. And that is my SUNY Orange English major story.